Well, in the midst of all the political noise and everything else, there's one issue that concerns all of us but just doesn't get talked about enough, and that is the state of the economy. Where are the jobs? And that is a question that is now dogging the government more than ever before, because tall promises are being measured up against hard data, and policies like demonetization and the GST have only added to the questions and concerns. So here are some big numbers that we're talking about today. A new report that has been released just this week shows that factory activity plunged last month and had its deepest contraction in more than 9 years after the introduction of the GST. These contractions have been reported across all major sectors, including new orders, purchasing activity and employment. Government data released on Monday also showed that output across 8 core sectors of the economy rose just 0.4% in June compared to 4.1% in May. The fall in manufacturing activity comes amidst reports that the implementation of the GST had impacted the regular flow of manufacturing activity. Meanwhile, an earlier report by the Centre for Monitoring the Indian Economy, or the CMIE, has said that 1.5 million jobs were lost after demonetization in the first 4 months of this year. That's from January to April. But there are some other signs as well. The auto sector, for example, has been showing promise. India's largest car maker, Maruti, has reported a solid growth of 20.6% in its July sales. In fact, its stocks have been up. Meanwhile, today, the Sensex and Nifty also ended their sessions at record closing highs. How should we interpret all these numbers? Does this indicate that the economy is in trouble, or is it something that's much more complex than that? On the program with us tonight, we have Dr. Arvind Virmani, the former Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India and former Executive Director of the IMF. Professor Arun Kumar, well-known economist and author, here in the studio with us. Kalikesh Singh Deo, Lok Sabha MP of the BJD. And Mr. Mahesh Vyas, Managing Director and CEO of the CMIE, which came out with that jobs report. Dr. Virmani, let me come to you first. Sir, what do you make of this report that the Nikkei IHS market has released on manufacturing contracting to its lowest in 9 years? Does that concern you?
It's clearly connected to the GST. There were reports in May and July, reports meaning not written and official reports, but talking to various people, that they were cutting down inventories, kind of disposing of the inventories. There were specific reports related to consumer durables, etc. So the analysis that one did before was that because of certain uncertainties in the transition issue of getting credit for things which had been bought earlier, there were many small producers, sellers, etc., who had deliberately cut down their inventory, sold more, ordered less, and I believe that this is what you are seeing in the July numbers. Now, going forward, if this analysis which I am just giving you is correct, then you should see an adjustment after GST, which means over August, September, October, those inventories which were reduced will be built back, and you should see a reversal of this particular effect.
So you're saying that this is just a temporary glitch?
This is what, from whatever knowledge I have, that would be my analysis, yes.
All right, let me ask Professor Arun Kumar his sort of analysis of this. Do you agree with Dr. Virmani here that this could just be the immediate impact of GST and we may actually see a change in the next couple of months?
So the data that has come for June, and certainly there was a GST effect there, that inventories were being run down. But I think that's on top of a longer run horizon that we need to take a look at, because if you look at the industrial sector and some of the data that's there of the industrial sector, their capacity utilization has gone down according to RBI. It's running between 70 and 75% over the last 8-9 months. And when capacity utilization is low, then it means investment is low. And investment data also shows that investment has come down. If investment comes down, it means it's a long-term effect. It's not just a short-term effect. So if you look at the totality of the picture, data has come that, the jobs have gone down, there's been cut in jobs, there is a problem in investment, there's a problem with regard to, the rate of growth of the economy as a whole. So if that is there, then of course this is going to be a long-term effect, it's not going to be short-term. And reason is that there have been 2 shocks in the last 8-9 months. One was demonetization, which was a big shock, and now the GST is a big shock. both these shocks combined together on a sort of a weak macroeconomic base is going to produce long-term effects.
I want to ask Mr. Vyas on the CMI's jobs report, which I think concerns people more than anything else. And Mr. Vyas, your report said that there were 1.5 million jobs that were lost after demonetization in the first 4 months of this year. Can you explain to us then what the impact of this would be going forward? Do you expect to see a change? Do you expect to see any improvement in the months ahead? And how much of a factor has GST also been on the state of the overall economy according to you, and therefore job prospects?
Well, I'd like to temper this 1.5 million number a bit. Mind you, Jan to April is a much easier season compared to September, December, with which the numbers are being compared. September, December is Kharif harvest season, is also the peak of all festive seasons. This is when employment is at its peak, I would believe. Jan to April, in comparison, has got lower economic activity compared to the previous 4 months. So when I say 1.5 million jobs lost, it needs to be adjusted for seasonal effects. Unfortunately, we started measuring unemployment only from January 2016. So the series isn't long enough for us to make those adjustments. Nevertheless, I think a loss of jobs is certainly somewhat disturbing. I don't even have enough data or haven't done enough analysis to say if this is a GST impact or not. Looking at more micro data on a week-by-week basis, I do see a demonetization impact. But I think what is important is there seems to be a stress in formal employment. So one more piece of information that I put out in the last few weeks is that we have lost more than 6 million jobs in the formal sector. So what has happened is that people have moved out from being agricultural laborers and wage laborers into being actually just hawkers. So they are small traders from even getting a daily wage job, leave aside the more organized jobs. So there seems to be at least prima facie initial evidence that there is stress on the jobs front. Going forward, I do see no reason to believe that this stress is going to ease out, because another database of CMI, which is the CAPEX database, shows that there is no progress or there is no real improvement in the investment cycle. We are seeing a fall in the new investment proposals coming up. So there is stress in those segments that create jobs, and independently we see a major weakness in job creation.
That's very significant what you're saying, and I'm also looking at data that FICCI put out very recently, Mr. Vyas, saying that according to a survey that they did, India Inc. is averse to hiring in the near term because they have doubts about the revival of manufacturing, and according to their survey, a staggering 73% of their respondents said that they're unlikely to hire new people in the next 3 months. And therefore, it actually fits in with what you're saying, which is that the pressure is obviously very high at this point, and in the next few months at least, you don't, as you said, don't see that stress easing. And the India Inc. response, I think, is quite telling, don't you?
Yes, I mean, India Inc. is saying that they are not going to hire in the near future, because India Inc. is also saying that they are not going to invest in the near future. So they don't find demand like was mentioned earlier by Arun Kumar, that capacity utilization, according to RBI's OBICUS survey, is very low. It's closer to 70%. So if they have got so much of slack capacity, if the power sector is seeing a PLF of less than 60%, then the economy is really in a very, very low position. It will take a lot for this capacity utilization to come up before investments happen, and therefore only after that will jobs pick up.
Well, Kanikesh, as a member of parliament, I just wanted to understand how you are looking at all these numbers that are coming out right now, because you know, we often hear, at least from the government, that it's, you know, India's the fastest growing economy, the long-term outlook is good. But when you break down the data as you see it currently. Are you concerned about what is happening to the state of the economy? Do you think there is reason for us to be concerned at this point, or do you believe things could pick up in some time?
Well, governments always present a very rosy picture of the economy, and they always try and market something which is not necessarily true. But we've all felt the lack of job creation which exists now. The top three sectors which provide employment, I mean, construction is down in the dumps, textiles are not doing very well, tourism is not really picking up the way it should be picking up. You've had demonetization, which is going to have a huge impact, in my opinion, on the economy as well as on jobs. You've had the GST, which is, in my opinion, a temporary glitch, not necessarily a long-term stopper for job creation. But there is an overall gloom. You've got a bunch of NPAs, governments going after the banks instead of lending more to small MSMEs. All of this is going to put a stop to the economy and job creation. So yes, it's a concern. What's a bigger concern for me is that we in Parliament are not discussing it at all. There is no mention of the economy or job creation when issues start burning up on the floor of the House in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. What takes the space is emotional glitches about mob lynching, about, as I heard in a question today, doing scientific research on cow urine, benefits of cow urine. I mean, really, I think there is a lot more focus which needs to be put and a lot more attention to the issue of job creation and economy, and we as parliamentarians need to put the government on a dock, which we are failing to do so.
Well, I hope you do have a discussion on the economy, because I think not just in Parliament but even on television and in the media as a whole, we need to be covering these stories more and talking about them much more. Dr. Virmani, would you agree with Kalikesh here that there is a lot of spin, a very rosy picture that is presented of the economy, or do you genuinely believe that a lot of this is just an exaggerated panic reaction?
No, I see there is a lot of change in the global economy since the global financial crisis. So unfortunately, not just politically or governments, but a lot of analysts, I believe, are not understanding. They are stuck in their old ways and they are not able to analyze the economy. I'm not saying I have a perfect analysis, but let me just give you an example. The corporate sector, what we call the globalized corporate sector, the part which operates globally, has been affected by two long-term problems. One is the excess capacity and over-investment by China, which affects the globalized sector across the world. So that factor has been there since the global financial crisis. The second long-term factor in India specifically is that interest rates, the real interest rates, which are what economists do or should be looking at, have been too high. So these two factors have added, Arun Kumar talked about the long-term factors. So unless something is done about these two factors, corporate investment and job creation will lag. Now some of the short-term factors will take care of themselves. We have discussed demonetization, GST, and more important, the two consecutive droughts with two normal monsoons. Some of those effects on demand will go away. I am convinced that over the next 6 to 12 months, that factor will be corrected. But unless the RBI, for example, focuses on the real interest rate, you will still have problems in terms of consumption, in terms of real estate, etc.
But let me ask you, Dr. Virmani, very simply, is the economy in trouble? Are we in trouble today?
Depends on your benchmark. Is the corporate sector has been in trouble since around 2011. Is it likely to improve over the next year or so? As I said, that depends partly on the policies that are there. Trouble, disruption, yes. Demonetization did cause a disruption. So there was trouble. Will it get reversed? I think it will get reversed, but that doesn't take away from the trouble. So, I mean, I would be very chary about making generalized statements. I'm not here to make political statements.
Professor Arun Kumar.
I think what we've done is we've not focused on the fact that we have a large unorganized sector. We're talking about the corporate sector. Corporate sector in terms of employment is very small. And the unorganized sector is the one.
Mr. Vyas is talking about the loss of more than 6 million jobs
yes,
in the formal sector, which itself is quite a telling story.
Quite right. But I think the unorganized sector, which employs 93% of the workforce, that's even larger. And there the real big impact is there of demonetization and of the GST, because with GST, as is clear about traders, about small producers, etc., they've been very badly hit in the last 2 to 3 months. So if you look at the unorganized sector, and the data for that comes with a time lag of 2 to 3 years, it doesn't come immediately. So the rate of growth that we are talking about, the activity we are talking about, is about the corporate sector, but not the unorganized sector, which is 45% of the GDP. If you take agriculture out 14%, that still is 31% or 1/3 of the GDP. If that is suffering, then that has its impact on demand, that has its impact on employment, that has its impact on the future of the economy. So in other words, if we include the unorganized sector along with the corporate sector, I think the picture is looking not very healthy.
Well, Kalikesh, let me ask you the final question then. I mean, you raised the point about why this is not being discussed in Parliament. Why don't you press for it? Why don't you push for a discussion?
Well, we try and push for these discussions. Unfortunately, the government seems to be focused on taking attention away from the economy and real hard facts on it. The issue and the emotional issue of politics today is not on job creation and economy, unfortunately. It's on moral principles, it's on religion, it's on faith, it's on anti-Muslim or anti-Hindu tendencies. And that's what the media and that's what apparently the people also play up, because election after election, despite the gloom in the economy and despite the gloom in job creation, BJP seems to be gaining from strength to strength. So there is a disconnect between the economics and the politics of India as things stand today. But yes, you're right, we need to raise these issues a lot more and press the government hard to answer these questions honestly.
All right. Well, I think this is an issue we'll probably be revisiting again in the course of this week. Thank you to all of you for joining us on to get a basic understanding of these numbers that have come out in the course of the last 48 hours. Thank you very much for joining us.